All right, so the last lesson of the year is on the sixth commandment. Starting on Monday, we'll be watching the movie The Giver, and I will have you evaluate that movie and analyze it and point out the moral themes, and I'll explain to you your essay for the exam, kind of as we go through it. And I'll help you make connections between the movie and the content of the semester. All right, but that's all we have to do next week. So Monday, Tuesday, and then I do think we get. I'll see you on Wednesday, and maybe we'll do some review for the multiple choice on that day. We'll play some games in order to do so. All right, and that's the plan. All right. So sixth commandment is you shall not commit adultery. There's a lot in this topic. There's a lot in this commandment. All the sexual sins, of course, are related to this. The message God is sending with this is that sex is for married couples and not any other fashion. So if we go back to the chapter on marriage, we talked briefly about adultery. We talked about why to save sex for marriage. We talked about contraception. We talked about human sexuality and the goals of it all. So we covered the main points, but there's just a couple details that we didn't cover because that chapter was already so long. I honestly leave things out of that chapter, even though it takes a whole month to get through. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover really two topics that we have not been discussed, but which are very important, I believe. And so I'm just kind of filling in gaps today. All right. First one is modesty. Modesty is honesty. If you learn nothing else from middle school religion, you learn that. So this is a hard subject to talk about. Mr. Peo always kind of just like puts his neck out there for high schoolers to just cut off his head every time I bring up modesty. And it honestly, in my 7 years of teaching junior morality, it's one of those topics where I'm like, you know what, maybe I just don't teach it because some students get so offended by it, you know, because when there is lust, the question is, who's to blame? And what I find is, of course, most people want to point the finger. And might be valid, you know. But when it comes to morality, you are not in control of other people, their thoughts, how they act, how they dress. You're in control of yourself. And so the point of modesty is for you to evaluate, are you being modest and why is that important? So sensitive topic, but it's something that I feel the need to talk about, especially in light of recent happenings on campus. You know, what happens often, yes, even in the football locker room, is immodest. That's immodest. You don't think about it. We tend to think of modesty as only the way girls dress, because that's the way it's been sold to you in your time at Catholic schools. Girls have to dress modestly, so don't wear this and don't wear this, and make sure your dress is this length. But that's one angle on modesty. But that's not all of modesty. Modesty covers, of course, both genders and in different ways, more than just dress, even, as I think we're going to figure out. So I'm going to give you 3 paragraphs from the Catechism on the purpose of modesty, why it's important. These paragraphs, I think, are largely obvious, but you have to understand the Catholic principle behind reasons why to basically what modesty is making sure you set up boundaries for chastity. Purity, of course, we're called to be pure of mind and heart, pure of body, free from lust, requires modesty, an integral part of temperance. So this is a sub-virtue of temperance, Chastity is a sub-virtue of temperance, and then modesty is right next door. Modesty protects. Well, the reason I bolded and italicized the word protects is because you're going to see that word like 3 more times in the catechism when it refers to modesty. What does modesty do? It protects you from lust. It protects you from impure relationships. It protects you from being made an object. Okay? It protects the intimate center of the person. It means refusing to unveil what should remain hidden. It is ordered towards chastity, to whose sensitivity it bears witness. It guides how one looks at others and behaves towards them, and in conformity with the dignity of persons and their solidarity. Once again, modesty protects the mystery of a person and their love. It encourages patience and moderation in loving relationships. It requires that the conditions for the definitive giving and commitment of man and woman to one another be fulfilled. Protection, protection, protection. So that's what it is. The way I summarize all that is modesty protects your very personhood, your soul, your being, from being viewed as an object of pleasure. I don't know if you've ever seen this horrible billboard, but it's been up on Johnson Street for like at least 2 years, I think. But you're driving south on Johnson Street, past a couple of car dealerships, not quite toward Ambassador, but probably a half mile or a mile before you get to Ambassador. And there's this big billboard up on the right-hand side, and it's got a couple of women dressed in lingerie. And in large print, the words are objects of pleasure. It's right next to these 3 or 4 women who are posing. And I just, we say that that's wrong, that people are not objects of pleasure, but it's like right there, like the exact words, like these people are objects for your pleasure. And it's just so sad, And of course, that any woman would allow, their picture to be up there with that. We know that's how people live, but it's just so blatant. Nobody's even hiding anymore. Like, come get your pleasure. And I think it's an advertisement either for like a sex shop / porn shop / lingerie shop kind of deal. So I don't want you to go out looking for it, but that is like blatant, immodesty. It's like, don't see a person, don't see a soul, don't see a child of God, just see pleasure. And I might have talked a little bit this year that's basically what pornography is. But that's how you have to, obviously those are extremes. But in the sexually saturated culture we live in, you have to steer clear, and you do so with modesty. I like this icon on the top right. Modesty isn't about hiding your body. There's nothing wrong with your body. God made your body. It's about revealing your dignity. God bless you. Adam and Eve were naked in the garden in paradise. Nothing wrong with the human body. The problem is how people perceive and view your body. That's the problem, And so to maintain your dignity and to not be seen, of course, as object of pleasure, we live modestly. We act modestly. The forms taken by modesty vary from one culture to another. So it's different. Modesty in America is going to be different than modesty in Africa. 2 different cultures, 2 different expectations, 2 different views of perhaps even the human person. Everywhere, however, modesty exists as an intuition of the spiritual dignity proper to man. Everywhere it's seen as do not violate me, do not objectify me. It is born with an awakening consciousness of being a subject. Teaching modesty to children and adolescents means awakening in them respect for the human person. So good luck in doing so. I like to add to the catechism. But it's being aware of, and listen, y'all, I grew up with 6 sisters, And, I'd see my dad tell them, like, you are not wearing that out, like, do not wear that out. And I saw, firsthand on a weekly basis how girls take that, from their dad, from their brother. I tried. I failed miserably to try to tell them, like, I'm telling you, guys are going to be staring you up and down. I'm a guy. I'm your brother. I ain't tempted, but I'm letting you know that you're setting yourself up to be looked at if if you wear that out. And it's hard because for a lot of reasons, whether it's a fashionable style, it's just comfortable. It's hard, but the point is this: like you are worth it in the sense of you're worth protecting yourself from. So, what is immodest? Is the question that you probably are wondering. And whenever students, I would never say anything specific, to be honest with you, but as students would ask, well, is it okay to wear this? Is it okay to wear that? I decided not to speak to that at all because it just caused drama and students taking my words out of context. Mr. Bale says you wear a bikini, you're going to hell. That happened like 3 years in a row. So I'm going to let you hang each other. That's the point of this question. And I want you to see, and you will largely be able to tell which of these submissions are from girls and which of these submissions are from guys, because of how guys and girls are different in perceiving and being led to lust. And so I want you to see anonymously, of course, on Socrative, what your peers are tempted by. And if you know that, your peers are tempted by X, Y, and Z, you may, out of charity for them, avoid that. And this goes for guys and girls. It's not all going to be dress up here. All right. Okay. Guys, as I think we're going to see as we go down this list, can be very immodest in the jokes they tell, the words they say, and physical touch. Immodest. We don't ever talk about that. We don't ever say. I mean, what a week to talk about it. In a Catholic campus, we should be calling out every dirty joke. On a Catholic campus, we should be telling people to zip it and face a punishment for anything. Any sexual reference, any impure, whether it be a joke or it be serious. But that is immodest, because we'll assume it's a guy who's saying a dirty sexual joke. So that's usually the case, because guys are immodest in that way. What's happening there is the guy's being immodest. He's drawing whoever is listening their attention to sexual matters, intimate matters, that we don't need help thinking about sex. Like, it's all around us, and it's just unnecessary, impure, immodest. So telling sexual jokes is immodest. The way they may dress, keeping that pretty vague. Impure dress, of course, can lead somebody to lust. Showing too much. Dirty dancing. Maybe dancing is immodest. That could go, of course, for guys and girls. No clue. What is lust, Mr. Pay? I don't know. There you go. There's the physical touch. When a guy and girl hug just to say hi, and the guy, tugs a little bit extra, he moves his hands. They're immodest, wrong, shameful. Unfortunately, though, yes, sir. Cohen Boyd, coming your way. And ladies, it's slap him across the face. You have my permission. I this is an issue. I had a meeting with Principal Boyer a couple of days ago to sign my contract. He said some senior parent of a senior girl said, I just don't like how my Daughter was treated on campus by other guys for 4 years. Principal Boyer lamented that, it's the end of this girl's time. He's not able to address it or fix it as much as he'd be able to. But he told me that too. It's like, we got to create a culture where a girl is ready and prepared to slap a guy across the face for being immodest, impure, moving his hands where they don't belong, et cetera, et cetera. You need to speak up. Guys and girls, guys in the locker room, girls 24/7, calling out immodesty. Who's that? Cohen's already back. Connor. Hey, Connor. Thanks. This is even a little bit more sly right here, initiating conversations that are geared towards leading towards lust. Guy trying to pick up a girl for perhaps a one night stand, telling us things we want to hear. Immodest, just trying to make a girl feel special once again, so you get what you want. That's immodest, to say the least. I don't know what that implies. Yeah, it's a problem, and it's not going to get better until everybody decides to attack it, guys and girls. It's a problem that you don't need. You know it worse than I do, because I'm not in your circles. I'm not at your parties. I'm not even near the disciplinarian here at the school. I teach religion, I coach tennis, and I go home. Y'all know how bad it is. You need to call it out every time. So there's other things that y'all didn't mention that I've witnessed in my time. I saw this mostly when I was coaching softball. And, there's a lot of downtime in between games and during rainouts. And I'd see the girls scrolling through social media. And that year, I had taught sophomores that year. And I would see some of my sophomore students, guys, on social media, shirtless, posting a photo of how jacked they think they are. Emphasis on the think they are. And the girls were like, "Oh, look at this! Isn't this cute?" And I'm like, "That's immodest. That's immodest, guys. Nobody needs to see your gains. Nobody cares. Okay, put that out there. And you can comment, girls. Next time, guy posts a shirtless photo, say nobody cares. Get over yourself. And Mr. Peo told me to put this here. Okay, so I'm just listening to my religion teacher. He needs to find it on a deeper level than his gains. That's not who he is. That's not who you sell yourself as. The same way a girl doesn't do that. Same thing with a guy. It tends to be, one over the other. I don't know how often those. I've seen a few of them. The guys in a shirtless social media post or whatnot. But no, if the guy needs a confidence boost, he needs to look deeper into his soul. He needs to find his identity, as a child of God. Post your report card on social media with straight A's. There you go. And be proud of that. But your body can break like that. So I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts? Anything I'm missing? Yeah, you gotta just be sensitive, to that. I'm surprised nobody here put that, but there's a joke about when somebody's staring at something, and somebody says, "Why don't you take a picture? It'll last longer." Well, you've heard that joke, okay? Well, think about it, especially ladies, of course, but it applies to guys too. that like you don't want a guy staring at you, but you know what? When you take a picture of yourself, he can. And listen, that video yesterday, that same environment video was lame and way outdated. But you all know there's some truth, to that. The danger of a photo. Even if it's at the beach. You have to ask yourself when you post that photo, are you okay with guys staring at it? And if you are, there might be an issue there. Because you have to know that guys are going to do that. You have to know that. And that goes for guys too. Now you have to judge how revealing, how seductive it is. Um, I'd like to think, I would like to. I can't verify this because I'm only one of 7 billion people in the world. But if you've got a picture of you and your friends playing beach volleyball, guys got their shirts off, girls are, you know, not wearing a whole lot. I like to think that it's just an athletic image and we're all respecting each other and it's not an opportunity for lust. I like to think that might be a scenario where that photo, may not be misused. I'd like to think that. Malay? Yeah. Yeah. To which I would say that this is the analogy I make. I know I have a friend who is married to an alcoholic. A guy married to a woman who is an alcoholic, and she's been an alcoholic for a long time. She's relapsed a couple times. She's in and out of it, gone through AA a couple times. This man does not go near alcohol, with her or without her. He is associated with turtlings when there's faculty gatherings and there's alcohol involved. He is just nowhere near the table, and not in a I'm above that way. It's just in like I've seen the damage that causes. I don't want to go home with that flavor on my lips, or my tongue to my wife. And we can understand why. On one hand, he might be frustrated at the damage alcohol has caused his life. On the other hand, he just might be um, fed up with it. Either way, for all of his motives, one of his motives is out of love for his wife, out of charity. And so I use that analogy to apply that to how you have to carry yourself and dress. Melaine, because I think I've said this 10 times this year, 50% of high school boys are addicted to pornography. And that, of course, is on them. They feed their lust. They're training themselves to look at women as objects every time they go to that computer, those websites, or whatever. So, yes, the problem begins with them. Nevertheless, if you're living around alcoholics, you don't go near alcohol. And so if you're living around sexaholics, of which you unfortunately are, you have to set up extra boundaries. I think out of the reality that our culture is so sick, you have to dress in an awareness of the sick culture we live in. And, there's a time to wear that outfit when you have a girls' night, when you have a, girls' basketball fun day or retreat day. There's times where you can wear those outfits when there's no lust involved. I'd like to think, but and I've heard Catholic priests say that it doesn't fall on you at all, and you should be able to dress. I've heard that opinion. I disagree with it, but that is a moral opinion that I've heard some priests say. You know what? It does just fall on the person lusting after you, but I think just out of charity and just not only charity to how sick we are, but also you're running the risk of sending the wrong message to them that you want them to see it, and you don't. But guys are going to take it the worst way. Teenage boys are going to take it the worst way. So it's messy, but it's. I think it's necessary. Modesty in dress is necessary to begin to change the culture. It's an uphill battle. Any other thoughts on modesty? So that was the first of two topics related to the sixth commandment. Thou shalt not commit adultery. The second topic is very different. It involves reproduction technology. I'm going to first educate you on the different ways people create human lives other than through sex. First one is artificial insemination, whereby a man masturbates. They save the sperm. Sometimes they freeze the sperm. It's from a sperm donor. Sometimes it's from a husband. The doctor then puts this into some form of syringe. You can see here, taking the sperm, inserting it into the woman, hoping it meets the egg, somewhere within the woman. But when it's injected deeper by the doctor, it has a higher chance of meeting the woman's egg. Now, couples do this when they are struggling to naturally conceive a child. So these are infertility fixes of the world that the Catholic Church, as we're going to see, does not deem morally acceptable. But the first one is artificial insemination, basically artificially trying to tell the body it's having sex and that here is a baby, or here is sperm to create a baby. I'm going to give you three things: artificial insemination, IVF, and surrogate motherhood, which you've already gotten a presentation on. IVF of the three is the most popular, I think, by far. It's I think it's the most popular, probably because it's the most successful. Doesn't make it morally acceptable. In vitro fertilization, specialized technique by which a woman's eggs are fertilized. So they abstract the eggs from the woman. And how many? I don't know. They can abstract one, they can abstract dozens. But the doctor's going to go in, take out so many. I'm just fascinated at our medical technology. The ability to do that is just wild to me. And then they're going to, of course, get the sperm from the husband or the desired husband, the sperm donor. And then they combine them under a microscope. Sperm and egg are meeting. The doctor is creating life using the natural elements of husband and wife. The doctor is creating life under a microscope. How many lives? He could just be creating one. He could be creating 30, to be honest with you. And then they put them in a freezer. And these embryos are frozen for usually years. I'm told that there was an uptick in this during the pandemic. Women did not want to have a child now at this stage in their life, but they knew that they weren't going to be fertile for too much longer. So what do? They said, well, let's make the babies now. And then when I'm ready to have a kid, just go back to the same doctor, pull them out of the freezer and put them in the uterus, and you have a baby. That's in vitro fertilization. Now, the sperm could come from boyfriend, it could come from husband, it could come from sperm donor. Could have a biological connection to an actual father or not. But that's how IVF works. In vitro means in glass. So in a glass jar, this life is made, frozen, and then inserted. Questions on that procedure? And then the last one, which I think y'all were the only group of the junior class that did it on surrogacy. But surrogate motherhood, of course, is when you hire, because that's basically what happens, because you pay the woman to carry the baby for you. You know, a woman acts as a surrogate when she carries a child in her womb that will then be handed over legally to another person or couple to raise. In part made more famous recently by Kim Kardashian, who I think has done 2 rounds of surrogacy. Two. She's got 2 kids through surrogacy. She didn't want to carry any more kids for whatever medical or personal reason. And so she pays somebody in the neighborhood of $9,000 to carry a child. And sign a contract. Baby's born. It goes to Kim and Kanye, who are no longer together. So that's a complicated life. Poor child.
Wait, so does this work like the same as
Yeah, that's a good point. They do largely do in vitro egg and sperm and then putting it in. Now the old school way, and this happened in the Bible with Abraham. Old school way before this technology is the man would just go sleep with somebody else intentionally and get that woman pregnant. And when that baby was born, the other woman would raise it. Um, so that's the old school way of surrogacy. Now with our medical technology, surrogacy looks different. It's so complicated legally that it is illegal in many states, including Louisiana. Um, so, I this is a class on morality. Like, there's right and wrong, right? And you have to form your own opinion on these topics. But when it comes to deciding if you were to do this or not, it's good to know that in Louisiana, it's not an option. All right. So that's how it happens. I'm going to show you a video it's a pretty well done video. The woman has a very unique accent that explains the Catholic Church's issues with these methods, and then I'll give you 2 more slides to explain why this is the Church does not approve of these methods.
7 things Catholics need to know about IVF.
And
The Catholic Church understands
that married couples who are struggling to conceive a child may suffer greatly. She therefore encourages research and the use of various medical techniques aimed at reducing human sterility, as long as the methods used fully respect the dignity of the human person. One technique, known as in vitro fertilization, or IVF for short, involves the process by which the father's sperm and mother's egg are fertilized in a glass dish, and the embryos are later transferred into the mother's womb. This process of artificial fertilization is one of the methods which the Catholic Church considers to be morally unacceptable. Here are 7 reasons why. Catholic teaching maintains that every child has the right to be conceived in the natural marital embrace or sexual act of the husband and wife. The human sexual act has 2 components, the unitive and procreative. IVF separates these 2 and makes the procreative component its solely goal. Through IVF, the child is no longer the result of the physical and spiritual union of the married couple. Instead, IVF makes the child a commodity produced in a laboratory and makes doctors, technicians, and even business people part of the conception process. The sperm used is usually obtained by masturbation, which the Church teaches is immoral, since the deliberate use of the sexual faculty for whatever reason outside of the marital embrace is essentially contrary to its purpose. If one of the spouses is infertile, it may be necessary to use sperm or eggs which are donated from a third person. This method infringes a child's right to be born and raised by his or her biological father and mother, who who are bound to each other by marriage, and to know who their parents are. It is also a betrayal of the spouse's fidelity to each other. Many, if not most, of the conceived embryos, who should be respected as new and unique human lives, end up dying throughout the process, being discarded, frozen indefinitely, or even used for medical research. Others, after being transferred into the womb, may be removed and left to die by a process called selective reduction, and those who do survive have a greater chance of birth defects. Finally, we must remember that children are a gift from God and not a right to be obtained. Though the desire to have children is a noble one, the child's rights must be safeguarded. These include the right to be the fruit of the physical union of his or her biological parents and to be raised by them, to be respected as a person from the moment of conception, and not to be treated as a commodity or manipulated. In light of the gospel of Jesus Christ, while sterility may present a married couple with a great trial, it still allows for hope. Spouses who remain infertile after trying all the morally legitimate medical procedures, such as NAPRO technology, should unite themselves with the Lord's cross, the source of all spiritual fruitfulness and life. They can express their generosity by adopting children or giving their lives in service for others. What about parents who have already conceived children through IVF? To these, the Catholic Church extends the grace of God's mercy by calling them to repentance and the sacrament of confession. She nonetheless sees each of these children as a gift from God, no less than any other, regardless of how they came into the world. The eternal perspective and the goal of making it home to heaven must always be kept in mind. These encourage us to willingly trust and obey our loving Father in all things, and to remain faithful to Him and to His one holy Catholic Church.
So there's a lot of reasons. Now, all those reasons are not applicable in every instance of IVF, but you get a a bit of an introduction to some of the moral issues of creating life that way. I'm going to give you one slide with some of those on them. This is a picture of surrogacy. You have a married couple there that hired that surrogate on the left to carry their baby, and um, you know that's what it looks like. Children have a right. Oftentimes, the problem is that parents think because we're married, and this goes for hetero and homosexual couples, just because we're married, we have a right to have a child, and so we do all these things. But that's not fair, and that's not accurate. A child, and this is why I write it on the board, a child is not a human right. Nobody has a right to another human. Nobody. That's not a human right. And it treats the child like something that you can almost purchase. Anyways, children have a right to be born of parents. A child has their own rights that ought to be respected. And so the issue with this child here in the womb is that this child very truly has two mothers, assuming that the egg came from this woman, and this woman is providing the nutrients, and all the mothering that goes in the first 9 months, really, even after the child's, it's not just she's growing a baby, and yes, she will hand it over, but that baby is going to desire this mother, and this mother has the hormones that are fitting to provide, of course, breast milk and other essentials, that are best for that baby. So that child is going to have two moms and a dad, and there's issues there, morally, in setting this child up for confusion, and the child, of course, is going to be separated from the surrogate, and there could be attachment issues, and it's just a weaker relationship there, and it's not fair to the child. Spouses have a right, or I would say, I would change the word right here, a duty to reproduce only, typo, let me fix this. Only through themselves. Spouses have a duty to reproduce only through themselves. So let's go back to the title of this lesson. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Don't have sex with somebody you're not married to. Well, that includes procreation. Don't procreate with other people. The fruit of your marriage should come from only your marriage, and you can get help and assistance. But when other doctors and of course surrogates are involved in carrying out the fruit of your marriage, there's issues on other, not sharing the full intimacy between these two people, which is what, of course, marriage is, as you know. Other people and technology have inserted themselves into the reproduction process. And so the Catholic Church says that, if a person was made through IVF, they have the same dignity as everybody else. They're child of God like everybody else. They have a soul like everybody else. They were made for heaven like everybody else. Same dignity. But that dignity was not reflected in the fact that God intends everybody to be made in an act of love between husband and wife. The moment you combine people under a microscope using tools is the moment where it appears that we are producing life and that we control life and that we can select life as we pull the embryos out of a freezer and we decide which ones we want, which ones look stronger. Here's another issue that was kind of referenced in the video. I'm told that IVF is becoming more and more efficient, meaning that when they take the embryo out of the freezer and they insert it into the woman's uterus, they're doing things that are increasing the likelihood that that child would survive. Years past, and I mean recent years past, the embryos did not have a good chance of survival, like less than half. And so what would happen is they would actually take, usually on average, 6 embryos, conceived embryos, babies, and insert them into the woman's uterus. Why? Because most of them are not going to make it. So they just hope for one. What you're doing is you're creating lives knowing that they're going to die. I think that there's moral issues there too. But sometimes you have 3, 4, 5, and all 6 stick and live. And then what happens? What woman wants to carry 4 babies at a time? Nobody. It's a big straw. I mean, if you get the show, you just get a wagon and you put pads in it. Like everyone just, you just haul them, The amount of car seats, Anyways, we make jokes, but what happens then when a woman is told, actually, 4 out of those 6 babies are now in your uterus? What happens next? What? You have to have an abortion because mom's not going to want to give birth to 4 and then give up 2 for adoption. And, even if you do, how do you choose which ones you adopt and which ones you keep? They're all your children. The moral issues just continue to spiral.
Wait, so they take that like a certain amount, freeze it, and then like however many kids she has, that's how many embryos they insert?
Well, that might be true today in 2021, that they just insert 1, because like I said, I'm told that they have a higher success rate now. But I'm telling you that for the past 20, 30, 40 years, they've been inserting numbers of babies. Most die. Those who stay some have to be removed. And I have personal, not that I've been involved in this, but I talk to adults that have done this. My financial advisor tells me, oh yeah, my wife and I were struggling with infertility, but we did IVF. And then he says this, he says, and only one of them stuck, so we didn't have to choose. It was awesome. And he was just like completely proud and happy about that. And it's like, that's, I was like, you risked that? You were willing to maybe abort your children and said you were almost happy that they were miscarried or they just died and didn't get there? You see that we are playing God when we do these things. I amazingly had a student. Now, this is more common than you realize. This is more common than I realize. You probably have classmates that were made through IVF. Every year I have student come up to me and say, yeah, that's me, Mr. Bayo. And 2 years ago or so in that realm, I actually had a student who talked to me about it early in the year. We just talked about how she felt about it. She knew that she was created that way. And then she did her final morality project on IVF. And the fascinating thing was she said, I believe IVF is immoral. And she talked to her parents about it, all respectful and understanding. But she said she's kind of laid on with a certain amount of guilt. You see, her parents did IVF 3 or 4 times to get her. So she knows that she's the one that survived out of many, and she doesn't feel great about that. She's going to live a great life. She is a wonderful young Catholic girl, going to live a great life. But there's issues on what are we know what we're capable of doing as human beings, but what should we be doing and how should we be living as human beings? To go through IVF, you have to pay in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $5,000. Of course, I already told you surrogacy. You got to pay that surrogate as well as probably the doctors. Surrogacy is probably much more expensive, in the realm of $10,000+ to have a baby, and like I just noted, it doesn't always work. All these things is we find ourselves purchasing human life. And we might justify it saying, well, we're creating it, we're giving the eggs and we're giving the sperm, but we're putting a price tag on it. Now, here's the thing. This is why I teach this very sensitive subject, because I bump into Turlings families all the time, and by all the time I mean like once a year, that tell me we're grandparents. It happened through IVF, but and we know that's wrong, but we don't care. We're grandparents, and our children were infertile for so long, but IVF worked, and it will work, and it will increase, a woman's fertility, of course, when you go that far. But a lot of Catholics, one, don't know about this. Two, if they do know that it's wrong, the church would improve it. They don't really stop to ask why, and they don't really look at the details on the damage, the moral damage that is caused by this. And so, for your last morality lesson, it's not a happy note to end on, but I just throw this out there for you to be aware about. As you get older, you're going to see this happen more and more. A real percentage of you in this room, probably 10 to 20%, will struggle with infertility. There are moral ways to find a child. Of course, adoption is one, but there's moral ways to increase your own fertility between husband and wife. The Catholic Church has been promoting a whole nother type of technology called naprotechnology, natural procreative technology. It's a woman's health science that monitors and maintains a woman's reproductive health, provides medical and surgical treatments that cooperate completely with the reproductive system. So what it's going to say is, it is natural for husband and wife to conceive a child. Of course, I already taught you many months ago that NFP is going to help you do that. But even if you are, you think that you're uniting when you're fertile and it's not working, there's other things doctors can do to increase fertility so that you can come and create a life out of an act of love. And let God bless you with life when He's ready to give you life. And there's still moral ways to increase fertility where you don't have to, go to the extremes of creating multiple lives and inserting them into the uterus and hoping it works, and then knowing that you're losing children, and it's not necessary. Prayer and science can help, and the child will be likely healthier because of it all. All right, that's all I have to teach. Questions on reproductive technology, health?